So nice to see you. And I, of course, have all of my own personal questions that I feel like I would just book a session with you for because we have so many community questions,
Yeah.
which I feel like you saw. And there was kind of a beautiful thing that happened for everybody. And just all of those questions, I received so many responses from people saying, these aren't necessarily what I'm concerned about, but reading all of this makes me feel so not alone.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and I think maybe like I had that experience too, kind of sifting through the like close to 1,000 of them to sort through them.
Wow. 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 Really?
So many.
That's a
Um,
lot. Wow.
yeah. And so I kind of thought like, oh, to just have this time with you and hit upon, I put like a quilt together of all these questions so we could kind of just go all over the place,
Great.
with the intention that anybody listening to this is gonna maybe feel closer to other people, feel less alone.
Yeah. And feel understood. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and get some tools because you have
Yeah,
incredible tools.
of course. Of course. Yeah. Get
um,
some real tools. Yeah.
yeah. So maybe just starting with, and this is actually maybe more, this is my one question for you.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Hit me with it.
What are some somatic signs we can start to pay attention to in our own body, whether it's in dating or family or work? What can we tune into in our body? What are some signs we can scan for if we're not used to just trusting our body? That would be some green flags and some red flags.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's an interesting question that doesn't have such a simple answer because a lot of people will go into a somatic pattern that has nothing to do with the other person, that actually has nothing to do, like there is no actual danger, there is no actual red flag. But that person, maybe because they deal with a lot of anxiety, for example, will have a whole somatic thing. So I think that rather than trying to trust your body in order to, well, there's two ways I would answer that. So number one, if there's a somatic response to every single emotion that we feel. So there's a somatic response to feeling peaceful, there's a somatic response to joy, there's a somatic response to fear, and there's a somatic response to excitement. And the somatic response to excitement is very similar to the somatic response to fear. And so oftentimes, let's say like if someone's like on a date, for example, or they're preparing for a date and they're feeling like they're having like all this like anxiety, and they're freaking out. Sometimes the reframe for that is I say, well, actually, you're really excited. And maybe you need to tap into the fact that like you feel like a little girl right now for the first time in a long time. And that little girl who's like, oh, what am I gonna wear? Like, are my legs shaved? Like, do I smell good? Like all those things are actually really fun, right? So we're having these somatic responses all the time. And, clearly, if we're anxious and we're experiencing the surge of adrenaline, which is going to cause like sweating and it's going to cause, maybe a little bit of like tremor and shaking and feeling tension in the body, that's always just a sign that you need to ground and to breathe and all of that. I think that um, if you're in a relationship and you're feeling like your nervous system, like you're always in fight or flight, or you don't feel, or let's say you're with someone who's actually a really great person, but they're like whatever, like their energy is such that when you're around them you feel drained, you feel exhausted, you feel these are the signs to actually look out for. And it's just a clue rather than seeing it as like a red flag necessarily. it's a clue that you have to say, oh, like, I'm feeling this way, in my relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So the red flag is something needs to be addressed. Maybe it's my resentment. Maybe it's something that is just, we're not communicating. So we're meant to, quote unquote, be, our natural state of being is relaxed. It's peaceful. That's our natural state of being. And there's so many things that contribute. I know this is a really long answer, but again, it's a complicated topic, right? It's not so black or white. And we want to feel, ultimately, when we're in a relationship, we want to feel safe inside our bodies. But when we don't, that doesn't necessarily mean that the person is wrong for us, but it does mean something's wrong in the relationship that needs to be addressed. If you're starting to date someone, if you're in the first 3 months of getting to know someone and you are not feeling at ease at your body, that's a problem. And I think that what so many women do, because there is a pattern, women who tend to choose wrong, is that they keep choosing these people where they feel ungrounded, they feel anxious, they feel like their nervous system is off. But they're really attracted to this person. Right. So they stay. And what I'm always telling people is, safety is not the only thing that you want to feel in a relationship, because then it's like, you need fun, you need adventure. It's just going to be very boring. But first and foremost, like, don't be committing to someone. Don't start a relationship with someone. Don't say I do to someone. Don't say, if you are someone who, when you have sex with someone, this is going to be mostly women, and then you feel all attached to them and you think you fall in love, and you can't separate love from sex, which is very difficult for women to do. Don't do any of that until you feel really safe with this person, safe to express an opinion, safe to be yourself, safe to disagree with them. So I hope that gives you some sort of semblance, because I know it's not that easy.
It does. And maybe for people that haven't felt safe in a relationship before, and are wanting to feel that way, like, how would you describe what safe really feels like? Maybe for somebody who is just generally anxious, that's not even their state of being. Like, what would be some goals for this person?
Okay. So the goals are, like I said, just to extrapolate a little bit on what I said already, is you want to feel safe to be who you are. And that doesn't mean, because who you are, you want to be trying to show up as a version of yourself that in other words, if someone comes to me and they say, I want I've been in a lot of relationships, and the relationships and the people who I tend to be drawn to, or the relationships I have, they've all been really like heavy and serious, not abusive, but just like serious. And I really want, for this next chapter of my life, I want to have more fun I want it to be more lighthearted. Like someone might come to me, like, I just want it to be like easier, I just want it to be kind of lighter, not so like hard and intense. The first thing I say to that person is, so then you have to be lighter in that relationship. You have to bring a lighter version to yourself.
I'm taking that note for my husband. So it'd be fun. And I'm like, is it not fun?
Yeah,
I'm gonna
be fun.
Be fun.
Yeah, bring out the fun then.
You've just given me something. Thank you.
Yes, exactly. But it's also a clue that might be like, maybe he's wanting more lightness from you too. So it's like because the thing is, you have to be collaborative in a relationship. It's like, okay, we want more fun. Well, then bring it. Like, be more fun, plan an adventure, or let's play Twister together or something. Let's like do something fun together. But yeah, so we have to decide on what we want the culture of our relationship to be. And then we have to create that culture by bringing that version of ourselves. So I digressed a little bit. So what are the signs that you feel safe in a relationship? When you're around this person, you feel like, in general, life's a little bit easier. They make things a little bit easier for you.
Yeah.
And, and that's in different ways. Maybe for some people, it's like, my life is a lot easier because they fix things around the house. For some people, they're like, my life is a lot easier because they're really, they give great hugs. Whatever it is, life is a little bit easier with this person.
Yeah. That's nice.
Yeah.
I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Life's a little bit easier.
Yeah. And before we move on to just, like everyone's number one question, I kind of, sort of like joking about my husband's, why can't it be more fun? And we got a lot of these questions, and I don't know that there's actually an answer for it. So I almost wasn't going to ask it, but, I think he was referencing, and I think a lot of these questions that I got were referencing, you have this incredible relationship, and then you have a few kids, and then everyone has a job, and you're breaking around the house, and there are so many logistics.
Yeah.
Do you have any pointers for when you find yourself in this? And it's like not forever, but you do find yourself ensconced in these years of,
yes,
there's like, how?
Yes. So this is the part of the relationship that has to really run well, like a business runs well. So what I would suggest is, when you find yourself ensconced in, being a parent and all these duties and all these things, choose one day a week where you're going to have an executive meeting, where the two of you sit down and you go through all the partnership part of the relationship. You talk about money, you talk about parenting, you talk about chores, and you talk about any grievances that you might have about certain things. Like, I really wanted you, like, I need you to take out, do the laundry on this day, or I need you to take out the garbage on this day, or like, pick up the kids. But it's just, you're not allowed to talk about those things any other time of the week. Just have that executive meeting. And then plan fun. Look, everything is great in the beginning. Everything is spontaneous. You don't have to plan fun, but sorry, falling in love. Yeah. I wish that love could always feel like we were falling in love, but anyone can fall in love. Staying in love is a whole different ball game, and that takes work. And so when you are married and you've got kids and you're running a business and you've got things, plan the fun, schedule it in like you would do anything else, and stick to that schedule. But then this is something to talk about in your executive meeting together.
Yeah, I was recently talking to a dear friend who had implemented this. And she said it was great. She said it just did so much for the relationship. And, she was no longer like crying out in public all the time at every single date they had, which
That's
she lived
great.
in a small town. I live in kind of a small town. Like, in restaurants in a city is one thing. Crying in restaurants in your small town, just
everyone knows. Yeah. Where are you located?
I'm in Santa Barbara.
Oh, you're in Santa Barbara. I was just there recently. It's beautiful. Do you like it?
It's so nice. And then I get to drive to work. And so sort of like a faraway neighborhood of Los Angeles.
Yeah. I thought it was very beautiful and nice.
It's very relaxed, but you could also see like maybe not the kind of place you want to go have your executive meeting.
No. I can totally, I hear that. Yeah.
Okay. So then for our number one question, which I feel like
Yes.
you've already segued into. People want to know, how do you bring back the lust, spark, heat, sparkle, attraction? I mean, I have like a whole page of words here.
Uh-huh.
To a relationship, and these are all people feeling like, I know I'm in the right relationship, I really love this person, but that is no longer there and I miss it.
Okay. So there's a few things. One thing that I always say, and that I think is the first thing for people to consider, is if the magic has gone out in your relationship, right? Because it's not just the act of sex, it's all the things that make you want to have sex, right? It's all the things that come before that. First, look to see if and how the magic has gone out in yourself. Because first and foremost, every single relationship is really about the relationship we have with ourselves. So have you lost some of your sexy? And I'm not talking about your sexy in terms of how you look. I'm talking about energy, like how you feel. Like, do you feel energized by life? Are you bored? Right? Because like when people feel bored, burdened, and purposeless in their life, they don't really feel as alive. And it's the aliveness that leads to a feeling of eroticism. So it's about like, Esther Perel is referred to like the erotic self. Many people have referred to this idea of the erotic self. It's not just the sexual self. Like if you think of what sexual energy is, it could be channeled in many different ways. But if you see someone like really passionate about something, they're talking about something that they're really passionate about, they're engaged in an activity that they're really passionate about, they're feeding their sexual energy, and whether they know it or not, or they're channeling some of their sexual energy. So first, it's like, are you turned on by you? Mm-hmm. That's first and foremost. Like, do you feel, are you not feeling good in your body? Have you gained a bunch of weight because you haven't been working out? And so therefore now you have all that shame and you're covering yourself up. Are you bored? Are you feeling purposeless? Like, are you not working out and eating well so that you can actually be hormonally more balanced, which actually leads to, wanting to have more sex or wanting to have more excitement? Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing that people, because it's really an inside job. And so that might, if someone is listening to this and it's really striking a chord with them, then it's like, okay, well, what do you need to adjust in your life so that you feel more energy? Maybe it's you need to relax more. Maybe you need to have that bath every day and like slow down so you can connect with that part of yourself. Maybe it's that, you have to like start that new project or whatever it is so that you can feel more alive. It's really about energy. And I'm not just talking about woo-woo energy. I'm talking about physical energy, how you feel. So that's the very, very first step. Because think about it. When are people most attracted to each other? We're most attracted to confidence. And this is not even this is all both genders, right? It's like however you identify, people are attracted to other people when they're confident. When is someone most confident? When they're in the flow of doing something. So people will say to me, the times I'm most attracted to my partner is not when they're right in front of me necessarily. It's when I'm watching them do something that has nothing to do with me. They don't need me. I'm almost irrelevant, and they're just like in flow in their element. That's when I want them. Because number one, you're seeing them not just as partner, you're not just seeing them as daddy, you're not just seeing them as mommy, you're not just seeing them as someone's, brother or sister, you're seeing them in their element. And so foreplay always begins when we are able to see the person in their element. So that ties me to number one, which is that are you in your element? And you don't have to be doing something major or grand. Doesn't mean like it could be anything. I mean, some people have said the sexiest, I'm most attracted to my partner when I'm seeing them connect with our child in a way that's like, that has nothing to do with chores or nothing to do with me. So we need each other, and needing each other creates closeness. But it's those times where we don't actually feel needed by the other person that we're most drawn to them. So this is just things for people to think about. So maybe that means that, they need to have a little bit of separateness, but not too much, because that can be very destructive to a relationship. It's like this dance between together and separateness is this dance that we're all trying to figure out. Another thing is stress. Mm-hmm. And stress is sort of the umbrella that encompasses all of this. If you're really stressed out, you're not in your flow state, right? If you're not in your element shining and you don't feel alive inside, usually that has to do with stress. So stress is the thing that drives a wedge between two people, but it's not the stress, it's how we react to stress. Mm-hmm. And it's not my mother died stress, because that's an extenuating circumstance. It's just how we're like reacting and responding to the everyday demands of our lives. Mm-hmm. And so if people want to know how to bring back your lust, you're with someone for years. Sorry, Charlie, it's not going to be ever the same as it was in the very beginning, unless you break up. But I don't suggest that you do that. The goal is to make it better than it was in the beginning, different, more powerful, more connected, more at stake almost, more meaningful. But you have to be able to see how your stress is impacting your energy and how you're showing up. Because if you're constantly bringing the stressed out part of you, as opposed to the sexy part of you, the fun part of you, whatever, what are you creating? You're creating a relationship culture that's filled with stress, and no one feels sexy, wants to have sex. Like stress and sex don't really, you can use sex as a stress release, but when you're stressed, that's not when you're hot. Mm-hmm. No one actually wants to have sex with you when you're stressed out.
We can make a t-shirt from your right there. Nobody really wants to have sex with you when you're stressed out.
You just don't. That's not when we're actually attractive. Yeah. So, and then the last thing that I would say is, if you have a family, you have to prioritize the relationship. You can't always prioritize the children. And that's an unpopular truth. Mm-hmm. Because what the kids need is to see their parents loving each other. So part of the paradox is like, oh, you don't put them first, but you are putting them first when you prioritize the relationship. So you have to have date nights. You have to actually do some of the things that you did in the first month of the relationship, 10 years in, 5 years in, 2 years in, 1 year in, and watch things transform.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on different sex drives? And I think that this is mostly coming from women, and my assumption is that they are wanting to have less sex. Mm-hmm.
So, again, not so black or black.
I'm just making that assumption.
No. The assumption is no. The assumption is correct that overall, generally speaking, depending on the age, that mm-hmm. men want to have, it's the testosterone that drives the need to have more intercourse, right? And of course, it also depends on the age. It depends on so many factors. But if you're a healthy male with healthy hormonal levels, yeah, you typically want a lot of sex. And women, it's not that women don't have sex drives, but it's what gets them to want to have sex is longer. And so a lot of women will find that their quote unquote sex drive is going down in a relationship, but it's not hormonal. It's because whoever they're in a relationship with isn't romancing them the way that they used to. And typically women need romance to get wet. Honestly, we need the foreplay. We need the emotional connection. We need that deeper stuff. And I'm not saying that men don't need that too, but women typically need that more. And so if you're in a relationship with a woman and you're finding like that she's turning you down a lot, maybe you need to think about your approach being different. I also tell women all the time who are in a relationship with men, you know, it's important. Look, we're not always going to be in the mood to have sex. But typically what starts to happen is that once we start going and making out, we can get in the mood. Mm-hmm. So you have to push yourself. Mm-hmm. You have to push yourself a little bit and be like, okay, maybe I'm not in the mood, but they really want to connect with me sexually right now. Part of my giving, part of my actually loving this person is to then be willing to give it a go and let myself get going. So, you know, it depends who I'm coaching, but sometimes I do tell people like, you know, you got to try a little harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully people will have your voice in their head. Like, yeah, try a little harder.
Yeah, try a little harder.
And so there's some people wanting to know about porn addiction in relationships. Yes. And so it sounds like not just like a little porn here and there, but porn addiction.
Yeah. So I have a very strong opinion about this. And I think there are many people who share my opinion, but then there might be people who don't. But porn addiction is a real problem. And it's overwhelmingly, it's men who have the porn addiction. There have been women who have had porn addictions for sure. But the majority, you just have to, you can just do research on the data and it's like, it's like night and day. Oh, it's a real problem. It's as big of a problem as any other addiction, I would say. So, not first of all, what it does to the person. Let's just take a man who's addicted to porn. It will completely deplete him of. It's like the same thing as a man or anyone, but we're talking about men smoking weed all day long, every day. Your motivation is going to stop. You know, you see that where they won't have a lot of purpose in life. They're physiologically, and this is a fact, you're constantly ejaculating, like you're getting rid of a lot of chi and a lot of energy. It's going to exhaust you. I mean, why do you think, you know, there are sports teams, male sports teams, and they're told do not have sex for a week before the game because you have to maintain your chi. They do not ejaculate, basically. So, it's a real problem. Also, you know, then you start to these men have a hard time really going deep and relating to people in a deeper level. So they have a hard time having relationships because their relationship is with this person who they don't even know. So they become extremely emotionally available. Some of them actually become, you know, almost like very shut down. Mm-hmm. And then not to mention the fact, I mean, I remember I was much younger, years ago. I went on a couple of dates with a guy and he was like starting to share with me like how much of his like porn use. And I was like young and naive but instinctual enough to be like, oh, this feels kind of yucky, like what he's sharing with me. But we never actually had sex because when we became physically intimate, I was like, and I'm not a prude, but I was like, whoa, like this, like you learned this, like this is like, you think I'm like you're a porn star or something like that. And that's not hot, by the way. Like I'm not attracted to you at all. I'm out of here. So it gives you it skews a person's perception of sex. So it's a really big deal if you are in a relationship with someone who's addicted to porn. And if you are dating someone get out. Don't date that person.
Yeah.
So I feel strongly about it. What do you think?
I'm thinking about, and this is actually not this is not a scenario I know about, but my
Yeah.
mind is going to the place of you're not dating someone, maybe you have kids with this person, maybe you've been with this person for like 10, 15 years, and like the guy that feels like he's not getting enough sex in the relationship, and so starts like watching, because this actually is a story I've heard from friends where all they're pregnant or like postpartum, and then like
Yes.
their husband watching porn and they're really upset about it, um but I think and maybe this is an older generation, like there's kind of this thing around porn of like, what, he's not cheating on you, it's like not a big deal, like
Yeah.
cheating
And it's once in a while. No, you bring up a really good point. And once in a while is one thing. And I actually think it's better that people watch it together than you're doing it alone. But when it becomes like an everyday thing, it really, I think if I was working with a couple like that, I would try to get them to be having sex with each other, regardless of what, that would be my goal, is to get them to be having sex, because it's not good for the relationship. It's just not.
I mean, as we're talking about it, it's like, even if it's not an addiction, and I don't know what like classifies addiction,
Yeah.
but somebody who's lost their capacity to like function in life sounds like it's gone
Yes.
all the addictive state. But I don't even think that I would like it. I'm flashing back to, a dear friend of mine who shared this, and it was like, I don't like that for you.
Yeah. No.
For me,
No.
I think that's like a great way to deal with a person needing more intimacy in a relationship.
Yes. The person that if that's happening, your partner needs more intimacy.
Mhm.
And so then you have to step up and give more. A relationship is not a place that we go to get, it's a place that we go to give.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that we give to the point where we're people pleasers or anything like that. Nothing like that. But we have to stop pathologizing giving as well. Like, we have to meet each other's needs in that way. And so if it's gotten to the point where it's because if a guy's healthy, he's not going to like have to turn to porn because, like his wife or his girlfriend for a couple of weeks can't have sex with him. This is usually over a long extended period of time where he's being rejected or there's something going on in her life. But that is the thing that needs to be addressed, rather than being like, oh yeah, we can just excuse that. No, it's a symptom that something is wrong, that something needs to be addressed. That's how I see it. That's my experience with it.
And then I'm kind of, it's like taking me to some other questions we got around, and I listened to your talk on cheating, which I thought
On
was,
my podcast,
yeah.
yes.
And so
Yeah.
I want to have you actually, just want to send people to go listen to that episode.
Yeah.
You really get into it in a way that I thought was pretty profound. And, they weren't new concepts, but the way that you really walked us through left a deep impression on me, and just left me with more compassion, maybe
Yes.
compassion for, the friend or the family member that's
Yes.
in that, where like we can't just demonize that person. And that's sort of the knee-jerk reaction. So I'd recommend that everybody actually go listen to that, and then you can touch upon some of it here. But some of the questions we got were around, what is a wandering eye versus a cheater, and there's this
I
sort of,
know.
and I almost feel like the way that we're talking about porn outside of like a porn addiction kind of turns into this like, what if you are intimate with your partner, and like that's not enough for them, like having loving sex, a couple times a
Break up
week,
with them.
do it for them, and they need to do porn, or they need to like oogle at somebody in the grocery store.
No, break up with them. If you're having consistent sex every single week and it's good sex and you're not, look, we don't yes, people are very protective of like, well, I shouldn't have sex if I'm not in the mood. Like, okay, well, every time you turn your partner down, that also is creating an impact in the relationship. If you both want, in theory, physical intimacy, because some people are in relationships and they don't have sex, and like that's fine, like, but if the agreement is that physical intimacy, you went into the relationship with physical intimacy being not the only priority but a priority, well, then you better be physically intimate. You better figure out a way to do that, right? To schedule it, even if it's unsexy and you have to schedule it, like it helps. But if you're having, regular sex and every week, but then your partner is then googly eyes someone else, or no, break up with them. I wouldn't tolerate that at all. I mean, what is that? So, but let's differentiate some stuff. So some people are so incredibly insecure that if their partner even just looks at someone else, they freak out. That's your insecurity. That, because first of all, how many, like, I find it impossible. I'm straight, right? But I can't not look at beauty. If I see a pretty girl, I'm going to look at her. Like, I can't not look. If I see a good looking guy, I can't not look. I mean, or just maybe something they're wearing. We're visual. We have eyes, right? So if I see an attractive person, whether I'm attracted to them or not, I'm going to notice them. And so some people are so insecure. It's like they walk down the street and their man or their woman looks at someone who's attractive and they're like, get all mad. It doesn't bother me at all. Where I think the line is crossed is, do you keep looking? Is your energy drawn to them? Are you staring? Are you sitting at a restaurant and they're sitting up there and you keep looking at them and catching eyes with them? That's inappropriate.
And so what would you recommend doing in that moment? You're sitting in a restaurant with someone and it's beyond just like, looking at an attractive person, and they keep going and like,
well, it depends. Yeah. So if it's a date, if it's someone you barely know and it's a first date, you don't see them again. Absolutely not.
Someone you're
in a relationship with. It depends, it's like, is this a pattern? Is this just something else? You talk to them and just say, not in the moment. You talk to them later and you say, look, something happened. I really felt your energy being pulled to this woman. And yes, she was a beautiful woman. I would expect you to notice. I noticed her too. But I'm just, this could be anyone, but like, I noticed your energy keep being pulled there and it felt really inappropriate. I didn't like that. But the thing is that they're likely going to get really defensive. So usually this is a symptom of something deeper going on in the relationship. Rarely would that happen between two people who are in a good place with each other. You can be in a great place with your partner. If someone hot walks in the room and they don't look, I mean, then I would be very surprised. It's hard. You look, you do a 1-up, and then you come back. I'm like, yeah, oh my God, like you can have that conversation. Everybody wants to be in a relationship with someone who's so fixated on them that they don't even notice anyone who's around them. And yes, that really should be most of the time. But sometimes people, it's like, especially for a man, like it's not even conscious. But if the energy keeps on going to that other person, almost always something else is going on in that relationship. Something is not working right. Something is up.
Some similar questions around social media. And so social media questions ranged from, we had a lot of questions around, some questions were around, I don't necessarily have a reason to be concerned, but I can't stop monitoring my partner's social media activity, looking for something, looking for signs of something. So that kind of like monitoring energy. And then there were a lot of questions around just people feeling uncomfortable with a social media relationship with an ex.
Yes. It's tough. This is the whole social media thing. I mean, like, for example, I'm older than you, but when we were in high school, I know for sure, like, this was not, we didn't have to deal with any of this. And so I really feel for like the younger generation having to deal with this. Very, very stressful. And it's very hard. I mean, so whatever standard that we hold for someone else, we have to hold for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I think when you start seeing someone, there should be a social media conversation, because I think that it should be, my expectation is this. My expectation is, I follow very specific accounts. I don't follow anyone provocative. And my expectation is that you're not following a bunch of provocative accounts either. And that my expectation is you can look at my followers anytime you want, and I can look at yours anytime you want. I really believe that needs to be in a relationship in order, because trust is very important. Mm-hmm. Without trust, you don't have a relationship. I've known women to say to guys that they were dating, like, this makes me feel very uncomfortable. And he's like, fine. And he just unfollows them all. And I say, keeper. That's a keeper, Look, is there any real difference between following a bunch of super provocative, half naked people and going to a strip club? I mean, is there really a difference? Because it's really become what
the difference would be, that a strip club is that person gets up and goes there without you and you don't have to look. And social media is that, like, maybe you're sitting at the dining room table with your kids, or like laying in bed with someone, and you can,
and you're going to the strip club,
and you're like the guys at the strip club, but also making pasta for your kids.
Exactly. But I think that people really need to know is that constantly, like, looking at these accounts is the same thing as just like going through Playboy all day long or going to the strip club all day long. So I'm more interested in helping people who are following all those social media accounts to recognize that if they want to be more conscious, if they actually want to be more mature, that, like, they need to be disciplined and not going there. Because that does not, you can't be going there all the time and be in a mature relationship. It just doesn't exist. You can't, because you can't build that kind of trust.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult. But to speak more to your question, regardless of what the other person is doing, people get really, really obsessive, and they start tracking their exes, and they start looking at the social media. And what can I tell you? You just have to stop, because you're driving yourself crazy. I wish there was a magic pill to tell you to just stop, but you have to, because what destroys a relationship, other than stress, the fastest out of anything else, is the stories that we create. So we think, oh, the person I'm dating is now following this random guy or this random girl. And then you start to create a whole story about it. And then you start to, try to be a detective. That's your problem.
And so if someone were to contact you, or, work with anybody and contact them and say, I'm coming to you because I think I need help, because I'm, telling myself all these stories, I'm paranoid, I'm obsessive. It's not about my partner. They've never done anything to break trust. Where would you go with that person? What would you start to uncover with them?
Yeah, so I work with people very holistically. So I need to know that person's world. I want to know what their friendships are like. I want to know what their family life is like. I want to know what they do for a living. I'm looking for what's missing in their life that has made it so that they are not, so that they're, that has made it so that they are so insecure. So I want to know what that person's real core needs are. And usually the core needs are for stability, they're for love and connection, they're for adventure, and they're for meaning, purpose, growth. So I'm always looking to see what needs of theirs are not being met, because, and to help them meet their core emotional needs so that they feel more whole on the inside and their life. So maybe they need more connection in their life. Maybe they're bored and that's why they're obsessing over someone else. Maybe it's because it's like they just don't take the necessary risk that they need to take in their life. They've been procrastinating. It's always has to do with that. So I'm looking at that. And so I want to help them learn how to meet their needs based on what we've discovered is missing in their life, so that their lives feel more whole, they feel more whole, and therefore they're not looking to this other extracurricular obsessing stuff to distract them from what's really going on inside, or to, prevent them from doing what they need to do for themselves. So that's typically how I work with someone.
Yeah. And so these questions around exes, this was actually where I had some men ask me some questions, and even some men that don't follow me. So like, someone had sent it to them. And so I feel like I really need to ask this question for this one in particular. But somebody who is still clearly hung up on their ex. And so I got like all variations on a theme. So whether it's they are still hung up on their ex, or they're really into somebody who's still hung up on their ex, or even a relationship where there is an ex that is still hung up on one of the partners.
Right.
Always.
Right. So let's say it's funny because I'm going to be doing a podcast episode on this for Valentine's Day. So let's just say you're someone who's still stuck on an ex, and it's, you have to give it some time. If it's 3 months or even 6 months and that you've been, and you're heartbroken, it's like, okay, sometimes it takes a year, especially if this was a really significant relationship in your life or marriage. Sometimes it takes a little longer. But if you're just, I see people getting stuck on people who really, they need to move on. I'm like thinking to myself, it's time to move on. A lot of times people get stuck because there's a couple reasons. One is they're fixating on one particular narrative of the whole story. They're fixating on like one thing, like one detail that person said to them, and they're ruminating and obsessing over it. And they need a broader perspective. They need to see the whole story. Like, no, like you're focusing on the fact that they didn't come with you to Europe on that trip, when really like, and that, or that, this one thing that you said that you wish that you hadn't said, it's got nothing to do with that. So they have to start to see that, like, that they weren't happy either, that there were a lot of problems in the relationship because that's why it ended. They have to see that maybe this person was really, really wrong for them, and to stop zeroing in on one particular detail that is giving them a reason to beat themselves up, because it's usually the beating themselves up that is keeping them stuck on the ex, or they're stuck in a deluded thought that this is the one person that they're meant to be with. So there's delusion happening. So part of it is just to learn how to see the whole thing from a different perspective. They've got the story wrong. And so helping them move on from that. Tied into that is also when you can't get over an ex, you feel stuck on an ex, is, again, since I look at people's lives holistically, is like, what else is going on in your life? Like, what's happening? Are you like, do you hate your job? Because hating your job, believe it or not, could make it so that you're really stuck on your ex, because you don't feel happy, and it's got nothing to do with them. It has to do with the fact that, like, life feels meaningless to you right now. Life feels boring to you right now. You feel stuck right now. So you're going to focus on them, thinking, like, you know, even unconsciously thinking they're the ones who have the key to your happiness, when really it's a clue that something needs to be addressed in your own life.
Yeah. And what about this is a story I feel like I hear often from my female friends, that there's like some delusional energy coming at them in their partnership, meaning, you know, a partner's female ex that is maybe just like still obsessed with. So when that delusional energy like comes at your union,
it's a problem. So in other words, you're in a relationship with someone who seems hung up on their ex?
No, you're in a relationship with someone and you know, I hear about this typically in more hetero relationships. Yeah. And so there's a guy, he's moved on, he doesn't care, whatever. There's a female that is like maybe hovering, okay, showing up, calling, crying, text messaging, just like not moving on.
Okay, so I just want to understand. So you're saying the difference between how men move on versus women move on? Or are you talking about you're dating a guy and he's got this ex that won't kind of go away?
Yeah, and maybe some tips on like boundaries, coordinating, clearing the space.
Yes. So obviously, or maybe not so obviously, but it's more complicated if they co-parent. So if you're in a relationship with a man and he co-parents with his ex-wife, they have to be in contact with each other regularly, and you can't monitor that. But they should be in contact. The only reason why they should be in contact is about the kids. There's no way that I would be in a relationship with a man who was also having a relationship with someone else, you know, like being someone else's rescuer or anything like that. So you would just say, you know, this is making me feel uncomfortable. What can we do about this? That's how I would say it. What can we do about this? This is making me feel uncomfortable. I feel like there has to be some boundaries here. She needs to learn to now lean on someone else. I could realize this is very uncomfortable for you, but it's very uncomfortable for me too. So let's figure out a solution to this.
Yeah.
So always have it be like a we, right? Because conflict resolution is very, very important and key to a relationship. How you engage in conflict really determines the quality of your relationship. So it has to be, this is how I'm feeling, I'm really uncomfortable with it. What are we going to do about this?
Yeah. For everything.
Yeah. I mean, unless they're just not doing it, then there's, obviously other things that, can go into it, but.
Yeah. Help with an avoidant partner. Especially if you are an anxious attacher and they're avoidant.
Well, first of all, I have to say, because this is just so blown up in the whole pop psychology zeitgeist right now. Just because someone doesn't want to actually have a serious conversation with you when you want to have it doesn't make them avoidant. I think that's just really important. Someone who is avoidant is really always avoiding the tough conversations, or when there is conflict, what they do is they shut down, and that sometimes they shut down for days at a time. This, I think maybe we'll have to do a part 2, is a longer conversation, but here's the thing that's really important for those who get anxious and they are with someone who might not be anxious or pulling away a little bit. What you have to do as an anxious person, your responsibility is to, if they are saying, I need a little bit of space, and I'm not talking about like, I need to take a week, I just need to go for a walk. I need to not talk about this right now. You have to respect that, because that person is saying, I need to go take care of myself so that I need to go regulate my nervous system, basically, so that I can engage in this. And the biggest mistake that I see very anxious people do is that they will literally and metaphorically stand in the doorway and not let the person leave. And that is not good. Mm-hmm. We need to respect each other's autonomy. So if you're with someone who has some avoidant tendencies, you have to say things like, well, first of all, are you always wanting to talk about the relationship? Because if you are, you're going to make an avoidant out of anyone. So if you're constantly anxious and wanting reassurance and needing to talk about the relationship, yes, you're going to make someone want to avoid you because that's a drag. But let's just say it's not that. Let's just say you just want to have a conversation. You just say, hey, no big deal. I was really wanted to go over a few things with you. When can you sit down and talk? Instead of demanding it has to be right now. And then something else you can say is like, I can tell that you are like a bit flooded right now and a bit overwhelmed. Go take a timeout. I'll take a timeout too. And then we'll come back to it. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes people will, avoidance, that's a real thing. Anxious attack. I'm not saying these are not real things, but sometimes people will think that they're dealing with an avoidant when really what's happening is that person is being flooded with a lot of emotional sensation, and they don't know, like, talking it out in the moment is not the thing that they need. So really being able to attune to your partner to understand that that's like what's happening for them is really intense and they need a moment. Where you have to have a zero tolerances for stonewalling. If someone is going silent and stonewalling and giving you the silent treatment, or like you just can't get through to them at all, that's when you have to get firm and say, I can't function like this in a relationship, because that kind of behavior will make someone who's secure very anxious. So I'm happy to have this conversation again just on this, because it's a huge topic. Yeah.
So narcissism.
Yes.
I feel like you can't get on social media these days without somebody in like 4 infographics and a meme telling you what a narcissist is and why you get to like cut everyone out of your life unapologetically.
Yes. It's a real problem. Most of the time when people are when they're calling someone a narcissist, what they really are, or they're saying, I think I'm, when they're accusing someone of being a narcissist, really what that person is immature and selfish. Not the accuser, but the person who they're accusing is selfish and immature. And one might say that that is part of what narcissism is. It's very, very, it's quite complicated, And then it's also just like, well, we all have these narcissistic qualities. So it's a much larger philosophical conversation, I think. But most of the time, what people are saying is like, no, they're actually not a narcissist, but they are selfish. Mm-hmm. And they are really immature. And I don't think you should be in a relationship with them. They are a jerk. They are not, whatever it is. But a narcissist, not really. So I think that it's, these terms, gaslighting, love bombing, narcissists, it's like, people saying, oh yeah, I was gaslit. It's like, no, they just disagreed with you. You weren't actually gaslit. But, but there is such a thing as being gaslit. There is such a thing as all of that. But everyone is just starting to throw these labels on everyone else. Oh, they're avoidant. No, they just don't like you. Or like they're emotionally unavailable. Well, no, they're They don't actually feel the same way about you as you do about them. So I'm really troubled by the constant slapping on these diagnoses. And but narcissistic abuse is it's
Yeah,
almost
what is the more clinical? Like when could
yeah,
you see actually the like 1 in 10,000 people that is really dealing with a narcissist? What is
yeah, exactly. So narcissists at their core are extremely insecure and extremely immature, like extremely. So and they typically have the profile of appearing very confident. And that's why, for example, a lot of heterosexual women will be very drawn to narcissists because they present themselves as having a lot of confidence. But what happens is when you find yourself in a relationship with a narcissist, first of all, they take responsibility for nothing. Nothing is their fault ever. I'm talking about ever. Nothing is ever their fault. And in fact, everything is always your fault. So that's one thing. They play the victim in a big way. So what you find, they're very manipulative. And so what you, and manipulative almost unconsciously, they're not even aware of this, right? So when you're with someone like that, you'll constantly find yourself thinking, oh my God, it's all my fault and I'm doing it to them. There's that constant narrative that's happening all the time. You're doing this to them. You're the problem. They're the victim. And everything is about them and their problem, and you are the cause of it. And so narcissists tend to attract people who don't have a lot of self-esteem. And so, because the narcissist tends to, even though deep down they're very insecure, on the surface, they're very grandiose. So they are very grandiose. And so they're like a magnet for the low self-esteem person. So it becomes easy to be manipulated into thinking, I'm the problem. I'm the problem in this relationship, and I'm doing it to them. And so it's a very, very, very exhausting. And literally everything is about them. Everything. The ancient Greek story of Narcissus. It's like looking in the reflection and only seeing them. Everything is about them. Their problems are what matter. They never do anything wrong. You are the problem. So they actually do a lot of gaslighting. So that's what it's like. It's not just once in a while, it's all the time. And so you can imagine what it's like to be in a relationship with a narcissist. Is like you come out of it and it's like it's like you were in a hypnosis for the duration of the relationship.
Do you think that anyone can ever be in some kind of functional relationship with a narcissist, or that's like
No, and you
become unnarcissized themselves? Can they?
here's the thing. We cannot have a functional relationship with anyone if we are or they are selfish and immature. Selfishness and immaturity is the thing that every single one of us, in small ways or big ways, need to confront in order to be in a healthy relationship. If you're someone who's had a string of unhealthy relationships, then what you need to see is 3 things. Where's your self-esteem? What's your thoughts about relationship, and have you been a taker and not a giver? And then how much are you acting like a child in this relationship? So we have to grow up. We have to learn how to give more consciously and more beautifully. And then we have to get our self-esteem, if necessary, to a good place. These are the three main things.
Yeah.
So you can't, if you're in a relationship with someone who is extremely, just insecure and always acting like a kid and not taking responsibility, no, you can't ever have a healthy relationship with someone who is either a narcissist or extremely selfish, unless that person is like, whoa, I need to change and I'm going to change. Yeah. But that takes a certain level of self-awareness. Right. And typically those who are really selfish or narcissistic, the golden nugget that's missing, the piece of the puzzle that's missing is self-awareness. They just don't have it. So they can't change.
Right.
Or they don't change.
Yeah. So what is a normal amount of hardness in a relationship? And then when is it really time to
move on?
Go? Yeah. When is it time to go? What is normal? Or when is it time to maybe get help and then determine whether you need to go?
It's the $1 million question that everyone wants to know.
Yeah.
I always say get help before it gets bad.
Mm-hmm.
Get help preemptively. Don't wait until you are rolling your eyes at someone and then get help, because then it's often too late. When is it time to go? Well, I mean, I really believe that relationships take work. What they take is commitment and dedication. You buy a plant. Your relationship is not a cactus. It can't just be there and existing without water. Your relationship is the plant that needs to be watered. It's the plant that when you go away, you need someone to come in and water the plant and make sure that, it's moved from daylight, if it has to be near the sun or away from the sun, that's the relationship. The cactus, it is not.
It's an expensive bonsai.
It's an expensive bonsai, exactly. I think that, and I've gone through the questions to ask yourself before you end a relationship. Number one is, have I been meeting their needs? Do I even know what their needs are? Because we tend to go into this, when we're unhappy, we start to panic and we get afraid. And then we just think this is the selfishness that lives inside of all of us, which is the self-protectiveness. Am I getting my needs met? They're not meeting my needs, that whole thing. And then we forget, how am I as a partner? Mm-hmm. Have I been a nightmare to be in a relationship with? Because it's very easy to be like, I'm perfect. I'm not doing anything wrong. They're the problem. So don't end your relationship until you can actually see that you are part of the issue. Mm-hmm. Not who you are fundamentally, but you've got some patterns that are contributing to the dysfunction of whatever's not working in the relationship. So you don't leave before you take full ownership. You don't leave until you figure out the ways in which you have not been meeting their needs and you meet their needs. You don't leave before you ask for what it is you want, because a lot of people don't ask for what they want and they expect mind readers. So I think that that's the checklist before you end a relationship, provided that other things are still there. You have similar values. You like to live the same way, and there's no mistreatment. If there's mistreatment of any sort, you get out. If you're just grown apart and you're two separate people now and you want different things. One person wants to live in the mountains, the other person wants to live in a city. You know, that kind of, I'm using that metaphorically, but people do grow apart.
Yeah.
That's a very real thing.
And so give us what you think is normal. And I'm going to give you like this like full spectrum, just because people reading all of these questions to you, I think normalize maybe what's going on inside their head. So like, what is normal, and what within a healthy relationship, within that container, what kind of stuff do we see in a healthy relationship? And maybe people are doing some formalized work together, maybe they're not. But like, what is that?
What makes a healthy relationship? What makes a good relationship?
Yeah, or like, what are the things that maybe are uncomfortable that can occur in a healthy relationship? So like,
oh, I see.
Disagreements, arguments, periods where you're not having sex. Like, can you normalize this stuff?
Yeah, it's all normal. And the thing is, if you're in a long, because a lot of people, the thing is, we don't have enough examples of enduring love. And when we watch movies and shows, usually those romantic things that we're watching the falling in love. There's very few, because that's dramatic, right? So it makes better TV and art. Rarely do we see examples of enduring love, of people who don't give up so easily, of people who really put in the work to go through the various stages of life to make life is about transitions. And we make every time, there's very specific transitions in life that can cause a lot of problems for the human being. It's like transitioning from preteen to teen, right? From like a 10-year-old to puberty, and then teenager to young adult, and then going into your 30s, and then going to your 50s. So we go through these stages of life, and our needs, we all have the same needs, but the structure of our needs changes. What we need at 20 is not what we need at 50 necessarily, or we need it, but we don't need, it's certain things are more important and certain things are less important depending on stage of life. Well, a relationship goes through stages of life as well. You have the falling in love stage. Then you go into maybe having the children stage. Or you have the falling in love stage, I should say, to the committed stage. And that's a transition that many people struggle with. They'll say, I don't get flowers anymore. They're not courting me anymore. They're not doing it. Well, of course not. Because that was that stage. Now you're in this stage. It's not about the courting. It's about having the deeper conversations. It's about talking about where you're going to live. It's different. It's different. So I think that people really struggle. I want to normalize some of these things because a long-term relationship requires that we are able to stay present and committed through these stages. Erich Fromm is well known for saying that love is a practice. It's not a feeling. So, and we wouldn't have philosophers and psychologists and ancient texts saying that love is a practice if it weren't something that we had to do in the face of difficulty. So you're going to have challenges. And you're not just going to have challenges that are between the two of you. You're going to be in a relationship with someone and they're having a challenge with their parent, or their parent dies. You're going to have to go through a lot together. This is why it's important to choose well. If you want a long-term relationship, you have to choose someone who's long-term relationship material.
Yeah.
So fighting is normal, very normal. But John Gottman, who's a very well-known psychologist and also relationship researcher, says, yes, all these things are normal and part of healthy partnership. But the predictor of divorce or breaking up is you need to have at least twice as many good moments as you do the negative moments. So you have the negative moments, but the relationships, the people who are happy in their relationships, they just have a lot more positive moments. And this is very important for people to understand, they work together to create more positive moments. They want to create more positive memories. They are committed and disciplined with each other to create more positive memories. You need positive memories for a relationship to be healthy.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the absence of hardship. Hardship is a part of relationship. That's why love is a practice, not a feeling.
Yeah. And you spoke about choosing a good candidate. And I wonder if you could like break that down for us a little bit. I feel like with my husband, by just like some miracle, I got myself to the place where like a guy like that wanted to get on a horse like me. Like he's a really healthy, stable guy that's just like a candidate for long-term commitment.
Right.
I don't feel as if I was raised that way. I
Yes.
feel like he's actually teaching me a lot as we go. And I thank God for that, because I can, look at different points in the marriage, and it's like I get really like, I will have just like big feelings and big fears and big ideas. And he's able to like let it get to a certain point and then really say, like, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Don't talk like that. Like, what,
Yes.
and it sort of wakes me up, and I'm like,
Yes.
oh yeah, like, of course we don't. Of course I shouldn't talk like that. Like
the
fear is really,
yeah.
And
You
so,
chose well then. Something in you got really smart.
yeah, like I think there was a gut feeling, and I could hold out until I found somebody that was really going to be the rock and help me on my own journey with healing. But like, do you have any more data points that people could lock into outside of my, like, I don't know, it was a feeling, I just knew?
Yeah. Well, you need to be sexually attracted to the person, but stop leading with chemistry. And also that also means, like, when you're wanting to choose someone, don't lead with your sexuality. That shouldn't be the thing that you lead with. And I've done it when I was younger, and I know lots of people do it. Don't lead with that part of yourself. You have to lead with the person who's really you on the inside, to even connect with people on a deeper level. Because if you're leading with sexuality, then you're just going to be with someone, the relationship is going to be one based on just chemistry. That's number one. Number two, fixing one's picker has a lot to do with, figuring out your patterns, where that comes from with your parents, and then getting so sick and tired of the choices that you've made. You got to kind of get to that point where you're like, ooh, you associate so much pain with the pattern that you're like, I'll do anything not to do that pain anymore.
Yeah.
And then you start to heal and you start to mature. And when you, any of us, are really ready to go deep with someone, guess what? Those people are going to start showing up. But if you're keeping it very superficial because you don't want to go deep, you're afraid, or your self-esteem is not where it's at, or whatever. You've got a bunch of beliefs circulating in your brain. They all cheat. They all do this stuff that mommy or daddy was whispering in your ear for all your life about, all men are like this or all women like this. Sometimes you have to really go through a process of divorcing yourself from these old beliefs that are keeping you stuck in this perception of what love is. So that's sort of like the deeper work of fixing your picker. But ultimately, it's just like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. I want what's real. I want the rock.
Yeah. Yeah. And saying no a lot, I feel like is part of it. Just like being brave to just put out 1,000 no's if you need to.
Very well said. You can't look, you can be lonely. That's part of being human. You could really like yearn for love and partnership. You can say to yourself, I'm better in a relationship than when I'm alone. And I accept all of that. I have no issue with any of that. But if you're not willing to say all the no's that you need to say in order to get exactly what it is that not only you want, but what you need, like you have to start to understand your psychology.
Yeah.
That you have to be okay enough alone. You have to be okay alone enough to be willing to say no. Because if you're not willing to say no, and this is not a politically correct thing to say, but it's important, then you're desperate. And I've been desperate before. We've all been desperate. We've all made decisions in our love lives or otherwise from a place of desperation, where we're just so afraid of the scarcity. And so it's really important to get in touch with the desperate part of you and not give that person any, don't let them take the lead.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, what like self-care is just like whatever that word has become, like I don't even know.
I know. Exactly.
But yeah, it feels like the no's can easily come from that place. And you were talking about it before, but like taking care of yourself and that energy. And so like feeding yourself, protecting yourself, giving yourself that creative energy that is going to make you more sexually attractive. It's like that same place. It's like the same place that somebody will be attracted to you is the same place that you feel creative and juicy and strong and content enough to say no,
Yes. And sometimes you don't feel great about yourself, but you find that thing inside of you. And that's what I'm always trying to inspire people to do. And you just have courage. Mm-hmm. You say, I don't feel great, but I'm just going to say no because this is what I know what's best for me. And I'm going to take that leap.
Yeah.
And I'm deciding right now that pattern ends today.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Some of the best.
Not to be confused, though. Sorry to interrupt. Not to be confused with searching for perfection in another person.
Correct.
That's the other side of the spectrum. Right. Yes.
That is the other thing that kind of shows up in this, like, I don't even know if I could call it pop psychology. It's sort of like social media advice.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't know, at a certain
point. This romantic ideal. Yeah.
Some of the advice out there is like, okay, well, then you will have no friends and no relationships.
Precisely.
Yeah. So, maybe we'll kind of end on, well, I have this other one maybe we can get into later, but maybe we'll end on just some of the stuff that's happening out there in like fast-paced dating now. And so the people that I'm hearing from are not necessarily in their early 20s. They're not in their
they're like more like in their 30s. Yeah,
like maybe they're in their 30s, maybe they're in their 40s, maybe they're in their late 20s. but just hearing a lot about like this anxiety around being chosen in such a fast-paced environment, and like getting on the apps and just somebody can swipe by you, or
Yeah.
going on a date and putting yourself out there and then just feeling like people are on this hunt for something better and more, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the kind of rejection that comes in.
Yeah. It's a lot. You have to have a very strong sense of self if you're going to get on the apps. You are you have to have you have to be sure of yourself, and you also have to not care. So people get, the apps can be very, very addictive. You have to see it as a play, as something fun, and that's it. And then you have to stand out from the herd. And the way that you stand out from the herd is that you be real.
Mm-hmm.
This is who I am. This is exactly what I want. This is a picture of me with my hair in a bun and I'm in a t-shirt and no makeup. This is also what I look like when I'm dolled up, but this is me, like, this is what I'm going to look like, most days when we're hanging out, and keep it really real. And then I really think that people need to go back to some of the old-fashioned way. Take yourself to your favorite restaurant, sit at the bar, order yourself a meal with a book, take yourself out to coffee. Sometimes you have to be very creative. If you're someone who's seeking a heterosexual man, guess what? Like, you're typically not going to find that in yoga class. So going to a yoga studio is great for building community. It's not where you're going to meet necessarily like your person. So maybe you need to go do something where a lot of the kind of men that you want are there, and you just do it. So you have to put yourself out there. You have to have new experiences, and start to engage in your life differently. Part of what technology has done, and then you throw COVID on top of that, is that it's made it so it's like, I'm not leaving the house. I can just go on my app and get Amazon. I could just order in. So everyone has become so insular and no one's out in the world anymore. And I'm thinking, what you really need to do to meet someone that's not going to drive you crazy and actually is going to be good for you overall is to get out in the world.
Yeah.
People aren't going out anymore.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But what did we do? I mean, how long have apps been around? Not that long.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not that long.
I don't know, but there is a lot of app anxiety.
Yeah.
Actually, we have a male friend, and so he was so kind and gracious and let me like get on his app, and so I had this like app experience. I was trying to find him a date.
Sure.
And playing with all the filters,
Uh-huh.
and like, I mean, it was a trip. It
It's
was
a
a
trip.
it was a trip, and I just like that experience. It's been so many months, and I still reference that because
Yeah.
the state that I was in, even just like playing with the filters and like trying to find our friend a date. And I can't imagine you have that on your phone all the time. And the way that I was just like swiping through faces where someone had like put their heart out there,
I
and
know.
like part of myself that I had to tap in for him, of just like, no, that's a no. That's a
Yeah,
no. That's a
I
no.
know. It's like, I know. And it's like you're shopping for shoes, and everyone is so disposable. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really intense. There's certain people I say get on the apps because they're just like, they haven't put themselves out there at all. And some people I say, get off the apps, just pretend they don't exist. This has to be like, we need to go old fashioned with this because it's driving you nuts. And it's
Yeah.
hard. It's
Yeah.
hard.
I mean, I also wonder if the anxiety comes from not not how people are thinking about you, but you've given yourself anxiety because you've spent several hours a day judging other people so flippantly that you
Ah, yeah,
assume,
well said.
you
Yeah.
know, like
We're all
that's
feeding into the problem. That's psychology behind it. Yeah,
when you're
totally.
speaking yourself.
Yeah, totally.
Everybody that I, not everybody, but women that I hear from, and they're like, and it's so tough. But then I look at how they are like, ew, no.
Yeah, I know.
Ew, look at that picture of him.
You're doing the exact same thing.
Oh
I
my
know.
God.
You're part of the problem. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay,
totally.
so for our last and final, and I'll hate to leave it on this note, but
Uh-oh.
ghosting.
Yeah.
And so I'm hearing about ghosting ranging in, from like a 6-month relationship to a 4-year relationship. And we'll take this example of a woman who has been ghosted 3 times in a row. And those relationships ranged from 6 months to 4 years. And so
My
she's,
first question would be, how does she define ghosting?
so I think ghosting would be
No,
like it's just,
I know, right. I know what ghosting is, but I would want to know what was really going on. That would be the first thing that I would want to know. Did this person say that have they been saying that they want out for a really long time? Like, so if it's the longer relationships are always the ones where people said I was ghosted by my partner of many years. First of all, that's devastating, but I would always, that's just the way that as a coach, how my mind works and how I want to know more. Was there really a final conversation, but now you can't get through to them? So it's the same thing, ghosting, narcissism, all these words. I always want to know really what someone means. But let's just say someone just literally disappears like a ghost. They don't, ghosting is usually like there's no conversation about this. There's no conversation saying I want to end this. There's no conversation. It's just like they just disappear. I mean, I don't know. It's terrible.
mm-hmm.
People who ghost are terrified of confrontation. So you've got people who are willing to engage in conflict with a sole goal, intent to resolve the problem. Those are the people who are good in business and good in relationship, right? I would imagine, given your background in business, even if it's really uncomfortable for you, you've had to be able to, I'm sure, train yourself to not be terrified of when there's a problem or conflict. You just have to get that fixed.
Yeah. And
right?
it's still, there's fear, there's terror, there's like courage that needs to be called upon, but like
you're doing it. But you're doing it. So that's what's necessary in all kind of relating. And then you have the people who are conflict avoiders. And then you have the people who are always seeking conflict. Those are the people who are just always, they want drama. The ghoster is like the conflict avoider on steroids. I will also say this. Some people in dating will ghost because they are so afraid of hurting the other person's feelings that they would rather disappear than have that difficult conversation. Like talk about people pleasing, like the people pleasing runs deep for them to the point where they struggle to function relationally in the world. And so they will literally ghost someone instead of saying, I'm so sorry. They're so afraid of disappointing someone that they would rather disappear.
I have a friend who was like, in all the dating apps and and kept running into this ghosting phenomena. So I guess it's like a thing that happens out there. And she was just like a ghost warrior and not conflict avoidant, and also had a handle, so she didn't have to take it personally and she didn't have to get angry and rage out. And she would just like write them these 4-page letters and really like get stern with them and let them know what they were doing was not okay. And this, and like just get into
That's
this,
hilarious.
give them a lecture. And
Yeah.
seeing the or reading
I
the
love it.
responses were always amazing. And it was always the same energy, it was like, even in like a 3-word response, it was like a trembling child.
Yes, a trembling child. Exactly.
Was caught and like really, oh
Yes.
God, now I have
Yes.
to do something. I can't ghost this. It was like sad, actually.
Yes. When you're ghosted, I know this is much easier said than done. This is so important that you understand. It's 100% it's their problem. It's their fear. It's their inadequacy in this area. It's their lack of capableness in this area. It's their state of consciousness, their immaturity. And so the only thing you can do is say, well, I certainly don't want someone who's capable of this. So clearly this is not someone who I would ever be able to have a relationship with because they don't know how to communicate. So good riddance.
Correct.
Much more devastating, traumatic, and complicated if you're experiencing this with someone who you actually have been in a real relationship with.
Yeah.
That's traumatic.
That's
But if dating, that's traumatic.
There must have been signs along the way.
Oh, no question. There always is. People will say it just happened out of nowhere, and then it does not happen out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't make it okay. But usually there's some other stuff going on. That person usually would need to then work that out with a therapist just to process. But if you're dating and someone's ghosting, it's just like, okay, that's the universe or whatever you believe in being like, nope, plucking that person out of your life.
Yeah.
We have to learn how to communicate, even if it's messy, even if we're not great at it. We have to be willing to be like, okay, I'm going to communicate. There's a problem. I'm going to communicate. That is the base level that's the base standard that we have to hold ourselves to. And if you do hold yourself to that standard, do not date someone who won't.
Mm-hmm. And the ghosters, I've heard the ghosters, sometimes they like to reappear 6 months later.
Oh no.
And that would be an amazing time for somebody to just get like really comfortable with a no. And this could be 1,000 no's.
Oh, it has to be such a firm no. It should be a no where you're almost laughing at the other person for thinking that they could step back into your life. Mm-hmm. Because here's some really wise words that a friend once told me. And she said this, if they can do it to you once, they're going to likely do it to you again. And I don't think that's across the board for everything. It's certainly not across the board for all infidelities. But, if they ghosted you once, they're going to ghost you again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, happy Valentine's Day.
Exactly.
Thank you, Jillian, for this. And is there anything if you could leave us with one last word? It can't be just one last word, but really try your very best to get out of your head, because it's the stories and the fiction that we create that lead to a lot of trouble. And if you happen to meet someone who's really adept at not creating a bunch of fiction, give that person a real chance. Because that's like a superpower skill in life and in relationship. And so it would behoove you to get to know that person a little bit better. I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye.
Amanda. Bye.